All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome. We're going to call this board meeting to order, and I would like to ask Janet Hall here to do a roll call for us.
Okay, we'll start up there. Mr. Morones.
Here.
Mr. Woodward.
Present.
Mr. Nielsen.
Present.
Ms. Kirk.
Aye, here.
Mr. Evans.
Present.
And I am Janet Hall. I think I
Who's missing?
We do have a quorum for tonight's meeting. I'd like to remind all of the board members that there's any potential conflicts of interest to state that for the record. If there's something that comes up later in the meeting and you think that it could be a potential conflict, be sure and announce it at that time. Item B on our agenda is a place for announcements. Does anybody have anything that they would like to announce to the board or the audience? There's nothing.
Who is not present at the meeting?
Item.
What?
Who is not present? Is
Mr.
it,
Gander, I'm sorry. Mr. Gander will be coming in late.
okay,
Thank you.
Item C on our agenda is public comment and questions. Opportunity for you to speak to the board. I'll ask you to raise your hand. I'll call upon you one at a time. Please hopefully keep your comments to like 3 minutes condensed version. Have you state a name and an address for the record. If anybody has anything they'd like to bring. Rich.
My address is 4905 Southeast Fairview.
Rich Cole.
Rich Cole.
Thank you.
Would like to know what the findings were from the 3 or 4 wells that were drilled behind my property on Rex Lucas's and Scott Holmes' property.
That's what we're all here to find out tonight as well. So the gentleman in front of you on your right or left will know a little bit there, and the gentleman behind you will hopefully know a little bit as well. So they are going to be giving us a report. I think under item B on the action under the county update. Okay, all right. Anybody else have anything they'd like to say, comments? If not, okay, then we'll move forward to the action agenda. We have first to go over our summary notes, what transpired at the last meeting. Anybody have any questions? Anybody on the board have any questions about summary notes?
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry to interrupt. There was a question, I think, from Mary. I thought I saw.
Oh, I see there's something on chat there.
I just, since we're on Zoom, could we, I don't know who's in the room. So you said a gentleman to your left or right. So I was just wondering if we could do a quick introduction of everybody just.
So, folks in the room today, okay, actually, the folks in the room from the county, from the COG, and from Keller and Associates. Could you do a quick introduction so that the folks on the Zoom meeting might be able to see? I don't know if we can move the camera around a little bit there.
Okay.
Go. We got front and center, we have Peter Olson with Keller.
that's scary.
Back of the room, we have Chris Imo. We also have Brian Nicholas. And you again.
Gordon Wilson.
Gordon Wilson, yes. Okay, and it looks like Brian Gander from the board has joined us as well.
I apologize.
Who's in the public? Who from the public? Can they identify themselves?
I can't hardly hear you, Ken. Were you saying something?
Who was from the public? He would like them to identify themselves.
Public. We have Rich Cole just asked the question. We have Bill Kesselring and his lovely wife. And we have Roll Lundquist, and we have Ann Carey, and that looks like everybody.
Thank
Okay.
you, Tony.
I'm going to translate for Ken tonight.
That would be nice, yeah, okay. So moving right along then, we have our summary notes. Everybody on the board have an opportunity to review those summary notes. Any discussion on those summary notes? Move approval.
I second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Then we're gonna move on to item B on our action agenda. We have a county update with Chris Langmo there. Chris, do you wanna stand up and let everybody see you there? Why don't you come over here by the podium so they can, everybody can see you in the front.
Actually, so Peter, I think is gonna start our updates.
Oh, okay.
So that's something else, while getting it queued up.
Peter, do I need to bring up your presentation?
Yes, you do, thank you.
All right.
Visual aid,
Thank you.
So Peter's going to start us off with a project of the findings. And then we'll speak a little bit about outreach.
That'll be final later.
Here. Yeah, I got it. Underestimated attendance. I can share one game, so I'm like, we got it.
Oh, we've got extras.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Chris.
I have a quick question. Is this something that was provided to us ahead of time? I didn't see it in the documents provided.
No, it was not. This is our first time seeing it as well.
Okay, if we could get it emailed for those of us that are not there, that would be great and helpful.
Can they see it on the screen? We will do
Yeah,
that.
yeah, we can see it on the screen, or at least I can.
So just a quick overview of what we're going to present. Keller Associates, our engineer, is going to present the findings from the site evaluations. And then Gordon from SES Group is going to present the business case updates. And then I'll have some just remarks on the end about this, the outreach we're doing. That's where the brochure in front of you is one of the examples we're going to use as just a visual aid for that. So Peter, do you want to take it away? Yeah.
So I'm glad to be here with the board and our guest and to chat with you a bit for a few minutes here. My presentation is not super long, but it gives a brief update of what we've been doing with site subsurface investigations and site selection for both rapid infiltration basins and treatment plant sites. Want to go to the next one, please, Scott?
Yep, if I can learn how to do it.
So the brief overview starts in where we looked at kind of cast a wider net, looking at various properties. Looking at some of the criteria we had was 6 to 8 acres. We wanted distance from the North Sandian River, and we wanted compatible soils reflected on the NRCS soil maps. And this was kind of, like I said, a bigger net. Start looking at different properties and where we could start narrowing it down. Got it. Our subsurface investigation started back in March with phase 1, and we looked at 4 different properties and doing test pits and infiltration tests. So this is kind of your shallow soils evaluation. What do we have on the surface, and can it infiltrate what we need to, the initial infiltration? Based on that, we moved on to phase 2 with, and you'll notice each phase we're narrowing it down. We're gathering more information, but we're not wanting to expend the resources at every single one to do every single test. They do, get somewhat expensive and costly. Phase 2 was in July. We had construction of single monitoring well and aquifer testing to characterize the deep soils. So we went from the shallow soils to the deep soils. We did that at 3 of the 4 locations based on the commitment and the test rates. Moving on to most recently, last month and this month, we were looking at, based on phase 1 and phase 2, doing further investigation with some additional monitoring wells, as well as 2 temporary borings. So borings that were drilled and filled in both at the same time. And those allow us, they did allow them to do aquifer testing and able to model contaminant state. So basically, the groundwater model that we're going to be running in order to evaluate that site in a more in-depth way to understand and communicate with the DEQ what it's going to look like. If you would like to move to the next slide. What we have here, this gives you just a visual. So phase 2, we're able to gather, actually phase 1 and 2, gathering this information from test pits and then the drilling. This just gives you a visual observation of what the soil looked like when it's coming out. GM5 is not suitable. You can see it's very clay and it doesn't allow for that infiltration. Where GM1 and GM4 there are much more suitable for infiltration for lower. Just wanted to give you a visual observation of the differences in some of the sites that we're looking at there. Based on the data collected, GM1 is the most favorable site for rapid infiltration basin facility based on the data. Which one's GM1, if you go back to the first slide, Scott.
Okay. GM1 is right here.
I guess the folks can't see me.
I'll point.
Yeah, so GM1 right here, so can you give us more detail on the streets? Oh, I'm sorry.
First, I think Chris had something he wanted to.
Sorry, I believe the opposite screen is being shared, so the folks online may not be seeing the right slide.
They're seeing this.
I just got a note that they were seeing the other laptop screen. I don't know if there's a way to change that.
Oh, hold on. I think, now I'll go back to screen share again. I think if I do that, it, let's see, yep, share.
And
Now can you see it?
One is the one right next to your house. Right?
Yeah, we were seeing it before.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I had another question. Was there another question? Well, I had asked if you give us more location of where the streets are. So the Fairview comes from Kingwood down here and then hangs left and goes just south of where the FEMA trailers and all that was located. So Fairview. Okay.
Can you say? Deeper.
How deep, I don't know the exact number, Chris, you might have that data specifically, but it went deep enough that we're going down into the ground, you know.
I talked to the guys who are going, it's only 40 feet, right?
For there's variations, not all of them are 40 feet. So we did use deeper, wells. Yeah, to be able to get down into the aquifer.
The reason I'm asking is because it's 150 feet or so. And I'm not and I wanted to know.
Yeah.
Right. That's not a problem.
Yeah, I can appreciate the concern. I will be asking the same question to you. And we're aware of that and we're considering that and going to be evaluating that. So I don't have the answer for you.
And just like, I did say, yes, you should be concerned. I didn't say there's no concern, but we should all be concerned about findings of everything here.
I don't know whether you can.
Right.
That would make me.
Okay.
The model that our geofield, technical are putting together what help us to be able to do better. Okay. But I just don't have it today. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have a quick question. I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing the questions from I don't know if it's the public to the presentation here, but I can't really connect the dots here. So either the question needs to be repeated so we understand what's being asked, or we're not following the interaction.
Okay, certainly, so, well, I need to,
Hey, Mr. Chair, this is Ken. I thought public comment was over with, and it should be question from the board, not the public.
thank you, I will entertain some of the public questions, because they're, have strong concerns here, and during the public comment period, they didn't, have any inkling what the presentation is, so they should be allowed to ask some questions, but we should probably try and let him do his presentation as much as we can first. But Bill, you had a quick question about concern of software.
Yeah, so as far as I know, I'm on the same aquifer that he's on, and apparently the same aquifer that they want to tap into. My question is, how much of that water are they going to use, and are we going to have to worry about our well?
This is not for drawing water.
Are you going to, you're going to have to clean the system, aren't you? So if you clean the system, you're going to use water.
Well, it would be the same water than the same aquifer that the city would be on as well.
Okay.
So, because we're on a well just on the other bench above that as well, so, as far as, I can tell you, the city's wells, when tested, were sufficient for lots and lots of use, so, I wouldn't call that a concern yet. So let's go ahead and listen to his presentation, and then maybe have some questions after we hear more.
Feedback. Okay, let me play again.
I'll
I
talk
don't know
louder.
anything.
Okay, yes.
I will talk.
Peter's gonna try and speak up too.
Might be better than that.
How's that? Is that better as far as feedback?
Maybe if you stand, look, that's a camera. Stand over here. Where's the mic for the system?
It's in my computer, so right here, as long as you project, you should be all right.
You don't have to sit right up on it.
Well,
It's where we need to be.
I'll project it.
Okay,
So off, on.
Thank you. Okay, where did I start, leave off? I think we're going to this slide and answer your questions. You know, that's where GM1 is located. I can certainly appreciate the questions. I understand the questions. The DEQ is not gonna let us forget those questions. You know, it's not being swept under the rug or forgotten. We just don't have the answers today. So I appreciate it. If you want to move on, Scott. Okay. Next one, keep going. So this last slide, I said it was a short presentation. This last slide shows a conceptual layout of what the rapid infiltration basin and the treatment facility could look like. I guarantee there's gonna be adjustments because I already know we've made adjustments already. So, but this gives you something to visualize what we're looking at here, and you can, if you could show it on the cursor, Scott. We've got the rapid infiltration basins around the facility. We can arrange that however we need to work with this, whatever, you know, whatever site they're in. What we have also is various facilities for the headworks facility for screening and grit removal. We have influent, I'm not pointing at something specific now, so I'm not gonna put you through that, Scott. We have the influent pump station, we have secondary treatment, tertiary filtration, which is important to protect, you know, groundwater, and then solids dewatering equipment, and then we have our rapid infiltration basin in the surroundings. The final layout, what things look like is far from decided. We have a lot of discussions to be had about a lot of technical, you know, concepts of how to work with the aquifer, how to work with the site, how to work with neighbors, so on and so forth. So there's, like I said, this is very conceptual. And then as this was to address a concern that we're aware of, we're looking at how to address those concerns, and I don't have the answers today. So.
Just because I'm ignorant, is the concept such that the water that actually goes into the soil after it goes through the system is clear, drinkable water?
Yeah, so what I forget your name, Rich, what Rich is asking is whether when it's all treated and done, whether it's, you know, clean, safe, And you're saying drinkable water that's being, infiltrated into the aquifer. It's not potable standards, but it's very clean, what we call effluent, wastewater effluent. And it's been through the treatment process, it's been filtered, and it has been, infiltrated into the ground. So the DEQ makes us meet the requirements for groundwater, water quality protection. So those rules don't go anywhere, as well as we're having to, look out for protecting and being consistent with and abiding by the three basin rules, which, makes it so in some terms, not looking like wastewater when it gets to the river eventually.
So with those three gray blocks.
Yeah.
And those. Like settling ponds, and what is that?
They're open depressions. They're not meant to be, have water in them all the time. So it's not like some, wastewater lagoons where they're actually doing treatment in the lagoon. These are not for treatment. This is solely to let it infiltrate into the ground. And so they infiltrate, they move to the next basin, and that basin rests. It's not standing water. And it moves around from basin to basin.
Below the surface of the soil for the most part then?
For the most part, you're gonna see some water when they're filling the basin from the treatment process. You're gonna see some water, but it's not super deep. It's only enough to allow for infiltration.
So we're gonna 50 yards from my back door,
I would say that it should not stink. It's not like the wastewater treatment plant, or it's not raw wastewater coming in.
Okay,
So,
okay.
So Peter, relative to what my septic tank gets out when I send it to the drain field,
this is much cleaner,
much cleaner.
much cleaner. So. If yours doesn't go through a treatment process or filtration or anything. This is the end of my presentation. I said it would be short and sweet. What we're looking at is we're continuing to evaluate. So it is an ongoing process. So, thank you.
Okay, real quickly, I heard one question, about water usage. Does it require very much water, fresh water to, as you said, clean the system or anything?
Peter, Brian Nicholas, Berry County Public Works. For processing water for like back flushing, that sort of thing, we use city water, right? We wouldn't use water from the well. Yeah, or would we use well, a well?
Well, city well,
To be determined.
okay.
As far as
It
the,
is, but it also is drawn from the well, you know.
From a million gallon reservoir.
as far as the treatment process and the technical side, it doesn't matter where it comes from.
Yeah,
That's something that we can talk and determine if there's a better alternative.
well, the city stores it in a million gallon reservoir here and another 250 gallons on the other side, so it's not like it would just be pumping up out of the ground right away.
So I was so kindly reminded I have more slides. I apologize. Look, obviously, I'm a little nervous, and so we're not perfect. If you go to the next one, Scott, thank you. So I apologize. I'm a little embarrassed. So these are an example photo of some RAF infiltration basins. Hopefully this, may help to answer some of your questions, or curiosities, unknowns. There's always questions there. This is in Florida, and this is pretty representative. What I don't know, and I'm not sure, is if this is black lining. We're not looking at lining the infiltration basins. We want it to infiltrate everywhere we can to get it down and not be standing water. What this might address is questions about odor, potential odor. For the treatment process, you can pull the air off of the treatment processes, and you can then send that through scrubbers and be able to, filter the air and make it less odorous. I will say that's an option on every single treatment plant, wastewater treatment plant that's out there. There can be significant costs associated with that. So it's not that it can't be done and lower the odors, it's at what cost. And so I'm not guaranteeing that it's going to be on this and to what level, but that's something that we'll be working through with you know, the county and the technical group. Next one. So as far as community involvement, moving forward, we are coming near to the end of our wastewater facility planning study, which is what we will be eventually submitting to the EDQ for their review, comments, and approval. We're looking at presenting to city council at various cities for Gatesville City, Indiana, Detroit, to inform them of where we're at in the process. And then conducting some open houses in late October for Mill City and Gates with the Upper Basin community fund. More information to come. There's a question.
Yeah, just for a matter of fact, the Indiana City Council is October 11th.
Thank you.
So, are you building this planning for the future, or are you building this plan for the needs of the community now? Because you're going to tap into Indiana, Detroit, the Gates. So, at what point in time in the future is it going to be maxed out, and when are we going to have to go through this again?
So I'm going to repeat your question so they can hear it if they didn't, but your question is what are we planning for as far as the future? Are we planning for the future, or is it just the present? Yeah. And at what point in the future are we planning for it? Great question. The wastewater facility planning study that we look at with the DEQ, their planning criteria, we're allowed to look 20 years out and project population. And that's a very strict and specific process of what we look at. So we are planning as far as capacity out to at least that 20-year time frame. But what, as an aside or an added note, we do look at planning these facilities and locations so there's room for future growth, but we're not building to that, you know, past that 20 years with this project. So there's going to be space available.
And I think second to that question, this is for the lower basin.
Correct.
This work right now is Mill City Gates in the lower basin.
There are efforts going forward with the upper basin, but what we're talking about here is the lower basin.
Detroit and Indiana will not be tied into this one. So Mill City and Gates will tie it into one. Detroit and Indiana will have a separate one. I think Damien has a question.
When I got involved in this a year and a half or so ago, it was project A and B. Have we changed now with the upper basin and lower basin?
I don't know officially.
Well, it's confusing for people who hear about this, because if I go to a council meeting in Detroit and I talk about project A and B, and you come there and talk about the upper basin and lower basin, they don't know what we're talking about.
I can appreciate that. It's not intentional. And we can look at it in the facility plan study. We can do a review, make sure
You're not the only one I've heard use that terminology. I just thought for consistency, we ought to make a decision about what we're gonna call anything and then do that going forward. You spend too much time on computers.
So you're pretty much done with what you have.
Now I think I really, come on, I apologize.
Chris, you know, put you on the spot here, you passed out this. What is this all about? This project hold?
How's my projection if I stand right here? Everybody hear me?
Yeah, that's good.
Yes, everyone has a brochure in front of them. It's a brochure that says Gates property owners. The reason we're passing this one out as an example is to show some of the tools we have for outreach in addition to briefing the city councils and in addition to the open houses, just taking a printed and presentation approach. So we put this first one together at Mayor Gander's request for Gates to have some information to hand out. And we can take a similar approach with the other 3 cities as well. There's some different concerns and different questions that tend to come from the different cities. So for Gates, there's a lot of information about converting septic to sewer. For Mill City, it can be more questions about their septic tanks. For Detroit and Idana, timeline, of course, will be, it's a different construction timeline for the project, the upper basin facility, so we will update that, as well as more information about the septic grants. So the takeaway from that is we can customize them based on the feedback of the individual city governments and the citizens. So that first one for Gates is there as it says draft on it, only left that there because I didn't run it fully. It'll be a little bigger, easier to read. But we'd like to go ahead and deploy that one and get the other ones prepared for the cities. So,
Nice work.
They do look nice. Can I offer 2 suggestions? I think Sarah has some pictures of Gates proper.
that would be great. There's some placeholders in there we took from our budget files.
So, and we worked, I think, a long time on an FAQ page on our webpage. And maybe that would be a good link that you see on your 3rd page, right? Where can I get more information? If you could get the link to that FAQ page, that might really help people work through it, if it's still big. You know, and I think it is. So that might give them a good link, as opposed to them having to hunt through the, I see you put the
We have a link to Marion County on here, but possibly want to.
Oh,
Record.
absolutely.
Well,
You can do that.
well, so I'm looking at this part right here where it's and maybe a little record and I think you said that, so
Yes, it'll be bigger print only.
yeah, but if on the back, if you could put that NSSA website and the email address, that's our general email, then people can send us their.
When you do a QR code, then you just scan it with your phone and automatically go to the site.
I think we can do that. I'll have to talk to our public outreach person. I'm kind of a dinosaur on that, but she's very good at that sort of thing. So I'll see if she can do that.
You and me both. So
Tony, I just emailed you the flyer that we're looking at. So if that's the question, I just confirmed which version this is and emailed it to you and Ken.
Okay, yeah, that was gonna be my question, is that for a lot of us that can't be present, if some of these things can be sent to us ahead of time, it's unfortunate we don't have foreknowledge of what we're discussing here. So thank you.
It shouldn't be a selected few that gets this type of information. It should be all of us.
you got it at the last meeting, Ken. You handed it out.
No, we didn't.
I took one home.
You took one home. You're the only one.
But I wasn't present, Brian, and so it just really, it needs to be either on the website and say it's there. I don't have a problem going to get it myself, but I can't be physically present every time at the meetings, unfortunately, and so that's all. Just thank you for taking the action already to send it.
okay, thank you. I would like to also make note, I know that Peter referred to him, but the city council will be updated here. And as well as it looks like we have an open houses not yet scheduled, but it looks like a couple of different open houses. Late October is when we're hoping to do those. So those will obviously have a lot more information at those, as well as updated information. So it looks like you have potentially 2 of them scheduled, one in Mill City, one in Gates, and then the upper basin or Project B, as that's what we call it, is going to be Detroit and Idana, also a date to be determined. Okay.
If there's no other questions on the outreach portion, I'm going to turn this over to Gordon, who's going to present the business case update.
Second, Chris.
So are we setting dates for the open house tonight?
No,
No.
I think, that's gonna be dependent upon, Peter and Brian getting together and then finding open house dates for us. He doesn't have all the information gathered yet.
Thanks for clarifying that.
How will the public be notified?
Well, we will put it out wherever we can, but, so you gotta. It will be on, like say, our own website as well as, I wanna say, how are we gonna do outreach for the meetings on it. I'll try and make sure we get it in the Mill City Messenger with the water bill, but gotta look at every site you can, every place you can, so.
Yes, and we'll
Yeah.
also do direct mailers, get in the Canyon Weekly, wherever else we can get the word out.
Okay, so that's, you know, if we try and post it wherever we can, where we think people are looking. And obviously we want more people to be involved, because the more information you get that's the correct information, the better off everybody is. So it goes out, so that, like I say, it doesn't, you know, rumors, people that actually have seen the presentations and understand what's going on, it's better for us too. So we appreciate you guys coming down to the meetings. Truly, so.
And, Mr. Chair, if I add, if time allows, we'll also solicit that feedback from the city councils, as they might have some insight on different ways to outreach each community, see what's worked best in the past. So we'll make that a talking point. Thank you.
Okay,
And I don't know who's gonna make the decision about upper basin, lower basin, whatever, but it seems to me that those two terms are meant more appropriate than project A and B.
What? Okay.
All right.
Sorry.
On the agenda, it talks about upper basin activities. Is there more to discuss about what's happening in upper basin at time?
I think at this point, the only other topic was, just gonna be updates on this update. I was primarily gonna focus that on the individual city councils, but I can give a brief overview now if it would help. Primarily, the main takeaway is that the residential grant applications are being reviewed. We're getting contacts with the residential recipients. And with the commercial, we have our septic design consultant engaged and has been meeting with all of the owners who have put in their commercial grant applications. We've made contact with all of them, and all of them except for one are now under design.
Are there any specific designs underway in the temporary city?
Right now, it's in the information gathering stage. So the questions being asked as we're designing is, what exactly is it you want to do with your property? What are your goals? And helping use that to guide that design.
Thank you. The reason I asked is the money has to be spent for this grant before the December of next year.
Yes.
So, and I'll keep pushing that button because it's important that we get this done.
It has to be obligated, but sent out by December of 2026. Obligated by December of 2026.
we have good news.
So I do want to. I'll provide clarity on, so there's no miscommunication on that. So if a commercial property owner is choosing to opt into the commercial septic grant program, they have to sign an agreement with Marion County. That agreement has to be signed by December 31st, 2024. Now, the actual construction installation of their system can take another 2 years. So the construction and installation has to be completed by December 2026. But that contract with the county has to be signed by the end of next year.
And I heard commercial,
That's good news. That's different than what I heard from that. Thank you.
but I heard commercial, that's the commercial one.
Yeah.
Folks that are residential property owners that would like to get reimbursed for the residential septic costs that are directly related to wildfire damage, they do only have until December of next year to submit their application to us and get all their cost information. So that the residential septic program will expire in December 2024.
Okay. Okay, Tony, you have a question?
Yeah, so some of the information that's being communicated about the business district, and as Denny's saying, whether we're calling it the Upper Basin or Project B, is that being communicated only to the members of the Detroit City Council? I sit on the council in IDANA, but only because I'm on this board do I receive any of this information. Is there what is your means for communicating that upstream to the rest of us? We're a real small community, but we're still, you know, some people actually have some interest in figuring out. I mean, we get our groceries, we do our shopping, little bits shopping in Detroit, and so there is bits of interest there. So what is your avenue of communicating? And if it needs to be me, I'm happy to do that. I just need to know kind of what that is.
Yeah, so the main avenue to communicate that to Detroit and to IDANA will be the presentations for the upcoming city councils. And so for that, it will be the same, essentially the same information shared, just I think they're about a week apart. There may be different questions from the two communities. And as far as the commercial septic goes, those have been all in direct mail and direct contact with all of the eligible property owners. But we'll be we'd like to put together a brochure that's specific to IDANA as well, that's up there. And of course, with the IDANA local government, any more context you have about persons who want to get more information and don't have it yet, we're always just looking at more ways to get that word out.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I just think that's, yeah, anyway, I'll leave it there. Thank you for your explanation.
Well, I do have a little more clarification. So these grant dollars for all of this program, the sewer system as well as the septic programs, it's all being administered through a funding grant with Business Oregon. Business Oregon has specifically stated in that funding, condition of funding is that only commercially zoned properties in the city of Detroit are eligible for the commercial septic grant, except for the new fire station in IDANA. That is a special, they're eligible. The new fire station in IDANA will be eligible for the commercial grant, but it's specifically the legislative intent of that slice of the funding was for commercial properties in Detroit. So there's not a whole lot, based on that, there's not a whole lot of outreach to do to the commercial, segment of IDEA. So
well, I tend to disagree. I think that because you're asking some of us to be on the board and be part of the decision making with the lower basin and upper basin, that the more communication, even though it doesn't directly affect us, is important to us, and at least important to me. And I'm new on the city council, and I'm kind of carrying that torch and trying to get a lot more people interested, so that when it actually does affect our community, that we hopefully have acceptance and not resistance. And so I would kind of challenge your last comment, but.
Well, I do understand what you're saying, Tony. We've reached out individually to each and every commercial property owner in Detroit, and then to the fire chief in IDANA. So we've reached out directly to the eligible properties at this point when it comes to the commercial septic program. So that's how fundamentally how outreach has been performed. But you're right, we can definitely get more information out to the community at large.
Brian Andrew,
Yeah, so Brian, is it possible that if those funds are not sought, people don't apply for it, that it could be expanded to like a community like Gates, who has a business that could really use a grant to establish a system that will get them from now to the sewer system?
We could, I'm willing to go down that path and see if we can do that. It will require us to go back to the legislature to get that legislative intent amended. Sure. So, okay. Yeah. So it would take some time.
Thank you.
If there's nothing further on that topic, I can turn over the floor to Gordon.
I'm gonna hand out something that we already received electronically with one small difference, and that is there are slide numbers. In case you need to, I don't know,
You're gonna have to tell them, you have to stand right next to Scott and speak right into that. Because you are so soft-spoken, Gordon, you're gonna have to stand. In fact, if you wanted to sit where Scott is, no, don't use that mic. It's a mic on the laptop.
I
And
can
just
turn that one back on if you'd like to try.
because and then, just tell the folks what you just told these folks.
okay, what I just said, is I just passed out a hard copy of the slide presentation I'll be walking through that is exactly the same as what you already, what the board members already received electronically, with one exception, that is on the bottom right corner of each slide is a slide number.
You're just gonna have to give me a sec while I find it, please.
Just,
Thank you.
Just to make it easier.
Alexa, set a timer for 11.
Can you hear me?
Please give me a sec.
Okay.
Thank you. Here. Go another spot. Sorry, everyone.
And I think it, he did it first. Huh? I think it did it first. Yeah, that's right. I was, dog and my life is on the window. With all managers on the other end, you know, keep both silent, something on the. That's one of them. Scott, can I help?
Yeah, you need to tell me which email it was.
If you close your inbox and go to the NSSA website, it'll be there as part of the package, I believe. Or actually, it was right there. It was right there.
This one?
Yeah.
No, that's the one here.
Yeah, sure as heck is. It's coming in like that. I don't know why it's coming in like that, everybody. I apologize. Laura, it's on the,
And the board members have it. Actually, anybody that's gone to the website and pulled the packet will have it. Or, and I think everybody in here has it, for the, it's gotta be, Gordon also has it, but has it on Zoom.
Got lots of these to get to it.
Yeah.
We have to guide you, we have to guide you through the folders.
yeah, where are you? I'm here. That's just.
Oh,
Said it was on. No saying canning sewer project, the second one. Financial advisory services. Meetings. Today's meeting. It's click it so we can see, make that right there so we can see more.
Oh, you wanna see 'em.
Full file name.
Hold on a second.
File name. Now, you see the line just to the right there?
Yeah.
I'll move that over. There you go. Okay, we need to revise with you. That's the very latest, but It's really the same that went out in advance. Okay. Want to go to slideshow?
Yep. And let me get back to here.
Okay.
Make sure I can share, please.
Ready.
Yeah, and I'm gonna share. And it's this one right here.
It's the one that says North Sandiland. Community Sewer Project.
9/11
Business case analysis.
with new logo. Got it. All right.
All right, for the people in Zoom land, can you see Scott's screen?
Yes,
Okay, good. Can you hear my voice?
yes.
All right. We're busy. All right, go ahead and first of all, I'm just gonna present an update on what I did the last month. Let's scroll forward. First of all, by way of apology, phase one is the terminology that I made up. Not knowing that there was even a project A or project B, or not knowing that there was an upper basin or lower basin. Someplace elsewhere in the, I might have, in the presentation, might have referred to upper canyon, lower canyon, so we got 4 possible synonyms. I apologize for that if that's confusing, but mostly I'll be talking in terms of phase one and phase two. Phase two, phase one being gates and history. That's the thing that large enough money for it. Phase two is Detroit. All right. Now, last month I gave you a very limited update, just incorporated the update project and there were no phases at that point, no scenarios. This version incorporates a lot more updated information and separates phase one and phase two. And the difference, the biggest difference. I also built in a lot of other updated assumptions. There's a range of projections for the average monthly cost per equivalent dwelling. Now that term, average monthly cost per equivalent, it's similar to the average level rates. So people, when you think about monthly rates, this is pretty close. Actual gate design can be a little bit different, but my guess is it'll be fairly close. Now, any financial projection, not just this one, is like a giant if-then statement. It's conditional, so it's driven by the assumption. But I'll spend a little bit of time going through assumptions so you can know what the results mean. Because only if the assumptions hold up, then the rates, the resultant rates will hold up. And then I have a little sensitivity analysis that shows you what happens if certain variables are put on the scenarios that we got here. Because there are a lot of variables, some of them are under your control, some of them are not. Go ahead and advance it. Just a caveat here, is what I've been calling a business case analysis. It's a snapshot in time. It's not a year-by-year forecast. It doesn't incorporate the ramp up in the number of connections. It does not incorporate new development. So that's a significant limitation. One of those things could be bad news, and the other could be good news. New development could mean good news, and they push the rates down. Slower ramp up in the initial connection, push the rates up. But those are not incorporated here. All it does is compare the potential costs with the point costs. Can you still hear me all right?
It's a little muffled, but we're
okay. I'll do my best. All right, we are working on a more sophisticated year-by-year financial forecast, and we hope to be ready to share that by the November meeting. And we'll have some questions for you at the end of this presentation to help us with those assumptions. But in the meantime, these numbers should help you with your planning and decision. That's the goal. So scroll forward. So what has changed since last month? First, the most obvious one is we now have separate forecasts for phase 1 and phase 2. And secondly, we assume phase 2 construction in 2027. That is 2 legislative sessions ago. That is not actually intended as any kind of a prediction about when it might be done. The reason I picked that is partly largely because when you have really long-term forecasts, the impact of cost inflation can distort things. The reality is costs do get inflated, personal income also go up. And in the first 5 years or so, it's fine to have that. But once you get beyond that, it makes the resultant rate numbers look a lot more shocking than they deserve. So 2027 incorporates plenty of inflation and it's got some huge numbers, the rate results, but I didn't want to go out any farther than that without having to adjust for constant dollars and stuff like that. It's just too complicated, this thing. So I assume phase 2 in 2026. It has updated maintenance cost estimates, and this is a big difference. We got these. Keller went back and scrubbed the earlier estimates, and before our estimate was about 440,000 for all 4 cities. Now it's 1.36 million for all 4 cities, of which about 734,000 is just phase 1, just Gates and West City. So a significant increase in the O&M costs. And my understanding is that when you visited with the city of Coburn folks, they warned you, don't underestimate the O&M costs. So I think the Keller folks took that into account and really tried to be careful and not missing any types of costs. There's a separate type of calculator for administrative costs, which I broke into now 2 categories. There's utility administration and there's utility billing. And that estimate is lower than the previous estimate. So so before it was $210,000 a year for all 4 cities. Now it's $210,000, of which 153 would be phased out. The main reason is that there are fewer customers in the expanded area than we really is. And a lot of the utility billing costs are driven by the customer. And I also separated the utility billing from other admin costs because they, I assume some economies of scale for those other costs. Loan interest rate, I assumed a little more pessimistic than 1.5%, say 1%, but it's still very much a favorable one, assuming it would be from the state. So we're not talking market bond rates. We're talking about state. Go ahead and scroll up. Once again, these are just assumptions. And if the assumption is wrong, then the impact on the rates would push it up a bit. That's the nature of the. Now, I made some changes in assumptions about the number of EDUs. I incorporated the feedback actually from last meeting about the number of EDUs and gates. Also talked on the phone with Detroit staff about the number of water meter equivalents there. I ran out of time to calm my down. I'm sorry for that. I meant to. So again, it's still the same number. And Mill City is still the same number because it's there's different story. So, but this is an updated number and it's lower than the assumption from 2 years ago. This is the denominator in the rate cap. And there's certain products that have a certain number of packages people can use the bill. And that's what the rate is like. And if there are few people paying the bill, then the bill has to be higher than the same amount of. So that's this is an important variable, and it's lower, i.e., more pessimistic than it was 2 years ago. Go ahead. There's no change since last month to capital construction costs, and we're still assuming no connection charge for existing structures on site. We're assuming that we want to give people as much incentive as possible to connect as soon as sewer is available. There is an updated valuation for the existing Mill City system. And the big has to do with my assumption about the treatment plant is that it needs to be entirely replaced. And therefore, the old treatment plant will be fully depreciated. So like this number represents just the collections. And it's 2.4 million instead of 3.6 million. And that's just about 500,000 above the outstanding debt. Now, there is many scenarios showing the changes in rate results based on levels of grant funding. Grant funding is a very high impact assumption. And I just put that into different scenarios. Okay, go ahead and scroll. This is a reminder that something, actually I got this slide from my presentation 2 years ago. It's just the same. There are two logical ways of organizing yourselves and any kind of regional partnership. And there are plenty of examples of both kinds. There's independent organization, there's embedded organization. In the embedded organization, require the independent organization would require a separate shop, separate headquarters, and a separate general manager. And it did not put that into this assumed budget. So to save money in the forecast, I assume that at least at first, that this new organization would be an embedded organization. So once again, it's okay to assume otherwise, but we really have a cost. So we assumed that at first Mill City would add this energy agency, and we did not get the cost of the headquarters building and a separate general manager. Okay, let's scroll down. Now we finally get the results of all those assumptions. First of all, phase one has a gap in the capital fund. The estimated upfront cost, I'm showing it about 55 million. We've so far had 40 million. So there's a gap of about over 50 million. And the question is how much might we potentially get from outside sources, presumably from the state, additional help to cover that gap. And the columns that you see here are the full range, ranging from 0% to 100% of the gap. Now, I think that neither extreme is very likely. 0% is, it could happen, but I don't think it's super likely because we'll be requesting additional money, and we have a good case to make. The project is largely funded. I don't think the scenario 4 100% very likely because there's sometimes a cost that might not be eligible. You can't necessarily count on grant funding source to cover 100% of all of the final costs. So I think scenarios 2 or 3 are realistic. The most favorable of the realistic scenarios is scenario 3. And that is $82 a month, given all the assumptions that you talked about. And the less favorable of the middle scenarios is $2 that we're trying to avoid. But that's why we would be asking for additional help for this. But again, this question of how much additional help is the very big thing that drives the rates. Okay, next slide. Now, I'm going to walk you through these numbers just so you know how the math works. All right. Just for this one episode, this is phase 1. Then I'll skip this for the for the future scenarios. And I'm gonna focus on, let's say, I'll focus on scenario A3, which is the third column. That's a relatively optimistic outcome. The upfront costs, total project costs about 45 million, plus inflation gets up to about 52. That's project capital cost. Then there's more money to acquire the existing collection system from the city. And the total up there is 55 more. And so we have 40 million so far from the outside funding. There's that $3.6 million gap. Question is how much additional help might we get? We got 80%, and this is the goal where it varies. All those other numbers up above are the same, all 4 columns. But the 80% is in the third column. That means we'd be receiving another 12 million from the state. So that would leave you with $3.1 million from yourselves. Either by borrowing or somehow, since that's roughly the amount of the Mill City acquisition and payment at time from this, whatever, but it's some ongoing amount that has to be covered from the resources of the community. So, yeah, I hope that makes sense. Now let's scroll down one more time. You've got 3.136 million at the bottom. Now scroll down to the next slide.
Oh, next slide.
And now the 3.136 million is at the top in the third column. All right. So that's your local share of the upfront cost. Well, if you're able to borrow that over 30 years at a favorable rate, that means 130,000 translated upfront to ongoing. Then you've got the ongoing costs. 3 categories. One is the maintenance cost, that's $734,000. Then you have utility billing and utility adding. And I base those estimates on the current budget in this. We have that utility. And remember, the utility is more than just a system. System is a collection of assets that we operate. The utility is an organization that owns those assets and it actually collects bills and does plans and does engineering. And the utility has more parts. It's management. So that's where these 67 and 86,000 are show up there. So you've got total ongoing O&M costs of 800,000. Add that to your 130 that receive debt service, and you've got a million open set. Once again, this is kind of simplistic. Not all the details that we've got. I'm trying to put them in the ballpark here. Divide that by the total number of equivalent dwelling units in just the 2 communities, Gates and Mill City. And that's 1,039. And you end up, divide one by the other and divide by 12 months per year. And you end up with about $82 per month per EDU. And the of that, $71 is the O&M, and about $10 is the debt service that we accounted for, the ungranted, the local share of the upfront. Okay, so that's my overview of the map. And now let's go back to the next slide. I won't subject you to that kind of detail. The question now is what would happen after phase 2? Now, I told you I assumed 2027. Phase 2 be constructed, but I had to assume something. But that also depends on how many land time years. That is the unknown variable. And so I made the remodel. Some rates, just, I'm assuming blended rates, so everybody in all three communities pays the same rate. For the entire NSSA after phase 2 is built. The question is how much would you need to pay? So I built scenarios, assuming 3 alternate sets of capital funding for phase 2, 0%, 50% rates. I'm just giving you values. I'm not making predictions about what is likely with the state legislature. But I wanted to see what it would be. And the answer is, it's pretty rough. We had monthly rates range least favorable, we got 0% help from the state, or the $300 and at the higher, the more advantageous side, the 88. So it's a pretty narrow path. The next slide. In addition, we're asked to model area specific rates for Detroit again on their own. What happens if they were not blended? And I assume, once again, 0%, 40%, 90%, 100% from the state. And the answer is Detroit and then on the island would have monthly rates of at least $150. Even if all the capital funding, if all of it from grants. So, and if only 90%, you still have to cover 10% on your own. That's just very, very, very high rates. So the value of blended rates is really don't blend across all 4 cities. It gets pretty tough for the upper community. Let's go. The next slide, and you can see the numbers. Yes.
All right.
In terms of critical thinking, make you think that you did that. Well, I'll try to address that in my last 3 slides. Is that okay? Okay. But one implication is what I just mentioned, is that for Detroit and again to have much hope of being able to make it affordable, it needs to be
You're putting lemon on it, or you got lime?
that's one conclusion. You can see that. So that last group, the last slide says, here's what would happen with Detroit and Adana are on their own, with area specific rates, not blended rates. And it's just, you can call it what you want. I would call it infeasible. It just doesn't work. I think for these two communities. But blended, it's still a challenge. And the question here is, depending on how successful you are getting additional help for the phase 1 costs, and then depending on how successful you are at the funding of the phase 2 costs, the rates are still very high. And after phase 2. So, yes.
So you assume blending when phase 2 came online, or
Yeah.
pre phase 2?
I don't have a year by year model. So I'll be able to know in a couple of months. So I can't describe the impact of building up faster. That's accurate. A good question. You need some kind of strategy to do that. All right, let's go on. This is a sensitivity analysis.
Need to go back one, I think.
No,
is that the one you want?
this is the next one. Yeah.
Okay.
So here's some alternatives. What if there were $100,000 less than O&M? The answer is phase one rates would be about $8 a month less. What if there would be a $2.4 million reduction in upfront capital costs? Well, phase one rate would be about $8 a month less. So this lets you know that how sensitive we are on these changes. What if loan interest rates were 2.5% instead of 1.5%? Well, it depends on how much borrowing is. It would range from, $8 a month to that. So depending on how generous the city is. Let's look at the next slide. What if there are additional 100 EDUs in phase one? How sensitive is that? That depends on the size of the revenue requirement. And under the no for the grant scenario, that would reduce the rate by about $9 a month. And if the 100% grant scenario, the savings would be about $6. So that's in the ballpark. So just to summarize the sensitivity analysis, $2.4 million upfront cost is equivalent to about $100,000 of ongoing cost, which is equivalent to about $8. So that's your name. 100 more EDUs is between $6 and $9. A 1 point increase in interest rates will cost anywhere $2 to zero. It was the state west would be outside that. So that's all with phase one. But you can do the same kind of thing with the future phases. It's just more complicated. So next steps. Our next step is to prepare a financial plan that includes assumptions about timing of connections and growth from the development. So that's going to require a discussion with the cities where properties are now on site about what steps that they're going to take to ensure a remote connection. So that's a very big question. Does that mean requiring connection? Only when septic fails, we say a fixed deadline based on the age of the existing septic system. We require connection with the property hands. Or does it mean requiring connection with everyone when the sewer is there? That's the easiest to hardest work is those 4 models. But it's a question that I need guidance from you in order to say, okay, how might the number of EDUs matter? I also need help from you about from the cities about proportions, about growth. So there are some legal and policy choices for you that will improve the forecast. And now that you've asked the question about food collection starting at a higher rate, that's another I can model with the next our next version of the financial plan. Go ahead. There are some next steps for you, for the municipal partners, and that includes some key governance systems for the short term and long term. And a big one, which is who is the entity that will own the system assets, issue the debt, and set the rates. And those are the 3 things that somebody needs to be able to do. Now, the short term answer may be no city, just be practical. But the big question is, what's the long term? And if not, how does if the long term goal is to keep the taking data, stay all 4 cities, then how do we organize ourselves to take actions to pursue that? How do the upper cities stay involved while we're waiting for this uncertain funding from the circuit? Is it worth setting up septic management, providing some services for septic systems? And then what if it's too never responded? Is there a future point where it might make sense to end the complaint? Those are tough questions, but they all occur if there's a long-term goal of everything together. And that's the kind of a big question. So summary observations in the last three slides. As a result of largely the updated component processes, there is now an even narrower balance. There's a really slim balance between the state's willingness to provide a launch and the local community's willingness to. Now, in Mill City, we're already connected, but there are 3 other communities with septic systems. So there needs to be a willingness. Now, phase 1, I think, is within the the state may yet have more federal dollars. You got the 40 million because there's this flood of federal dollars along the states. I don't think those flood waters have subsided. I think it's realistic to at least ask for more money. We won't know here, but it's not unrealistic. And I think phase 1 is within range also because 839 ERUs, over 80% of the total ERUs in that phase 1 forecast are already in. So we don't have to wonder about how we make this rate that come out. First wave will be required. Don't have to deal with that. That's it. However, the phase 2 prospects feel a lot more dramatic. And for both the state and for the local. For the state, the amount of continued state investment has to be very just strike gold twice. And secondly, property owners may be hard to persuade. Because especially if their septic system is relatively new to supply. So scrolling on. So uncertainty about phase 2, whether phase 2 might ever be final, makes things really complicated. There's a question about the long-term expectation of this part. So the government's choice, which is on your list, but it's on the side, it's made more complicated by the funding prospects. At the same time, the funding prospect is pushing for the rate forecast. You can see if we don't get more money, then the rates are out of sight. Last slide. This is my very last summary observation. I've been trying to help you disentangle these last few slides, and I struggled with that same question about what does this all mean? What do we do with all these numbers, all these scenarios, all these big yes. And one, and I'm trying to help you disentangle the cause and effect. You can see it depends on everything else. The rates affect the use affect the rates. The outside funding affects the rates, which affect the government's decisions. So there are a lot of things that are dependent on it. But I think it's helpful to think about what variables are under your control and what variables are not. And the things not under your control, the outside funding, long-term cost inflation, which we all have properties after such systems built. These are variables that most directly drive the rate. Those are things you can't directly control. The variables you can control or influence is number one, the long-term view. That has implications for the government structure and other choices. And then the actions you take to ensure connection to existing structures are now separate. Once services available, and the actions you take to generate new support and succeed. These are the actions that would put you in position to influence the uncontrollable variables when opportunities arise. I've been thinking, myself, what's the really with this the long term phase 2 being really hard to put down. But it was a possibility. And I thought, 5 years ago, I would have done the same thing about phase 1. Who could have predicted? I can't believe it. And it's not a federal dollars. But within those things, you were ready. you took steps, you reviewed, you went through the master plan process, you were ready. And the big reason to keep it together is to try to make it peaceful. If you put it that way. If you decide to do that, the big reason is to be there. And in fact, shovel it. Because you've got money to design. It's more ready than you were for phase one. You're putting your engineering. So that's the choice, is to say, we're gonna go on the assumption of the remote prospects are not tourists. And we're gonna do it so that we can be ready. Even knowing we might. But that's the choice. It's a kind of. The numbers without a significant amount of are just too big. So that's the best I can do. Help people with a very tough situation.
So Benny, did you get your answer? Kind of. What I see this. I appreciate, Gordon, all your analysis and these kind of numbers, because I think they are crucial for us to be able to see these and the possibilities and make sure that we're going the right direction. For me, it just reaffirms my stance. So we've got to come out of this with zero debt load. Now, I know you're just crunching numbers and showing us potentials and which way things can go and stuff like that, but I don't see it as being a real, well, some of the numbers, obviously, if we don't get any funding or make it impossible for anybody to live here, but even at the 80% finance or even 90% finance, it's still gonna be too much of a debt load, I can see, for the citizens, especially, I guess I'll harp on it again, since the benefit of us having to expand our sewer system and do a bigger thing goes to the downstream users, and it costs us 3 times as much to build a sewer plant because of the benefit going to the downstream users. So the detriments to the Canaan communities and the benefit goes downstream with the clean water and the savings that they get down below on their water, their potable water. So I want to say that we need to remain adamant that we come out of this with no debt load. And I know that the county's doing everything they can to talk with the legislature and stuff like that. Peter, I saw where you need to reduce our O&M by $100,000. As well as the like I said, 3.4 million in gap funding for the project is going to be essential, because we are low to moderate income communities up this way, and we can't pay that heavy of a debt service. It's just going to be unaffordable to too many people in our community. So that's where I'm at with that. But I certainly appreciate you, Gordon. Does anybody have any questions here for Gordon? Ron?
There's one little area, because whatever organization is right taking this over from Maryland County and study, they're gonna have to spend the time getting set up and getting ready for that. That isn't addressed in any of the scenarios like that. Now, the time is not addressed though. This is more simplified. The best peer saying that they're not interested in paying for it. That's probably gonna be like $700,000, something like that. Now they're you're talking about setting up. Well, you have to get an office set up, you have to get people trained, you have to get software package, you have to get all the information from the data you can put into that package before you transfer. Well, I did make an assumption that in the short term, at least, phase one, that be embedded.
I think Chris back there has some answers or some input on that.
Yeah, and I think that's a great question about some of those commissioning costs. I mean, we're actually bringing the plant online, training the operators. That's a legitimate project expense, so we are accounting for a pretty significant commissioning process. You pay that with the project. Now, that's part of that overall, capital cost that Gordon has put that, it's about 56 million.
So if we come up with an identifying authority, it's going to be on our side, and it's going to accept that, and you finish it. You'll pay us to hire people and train them, and to pay for those people in that service.
We will,
Computers, the software packages.
well, the project will provide an operator as part of the commissioning team, that will be under the contractor. The initial commissioning, but it's not something that we want a brand new utility to be doing.
They're gonna walk away at the end of commissioning, and we have to have everything up running and ready prior to the end of the.
I think
When they do.
from what I understand, Ron said go on the timeline table, that projected chart that we've seen before. It shows the administration and software stuff coming on just at the very end of the construction. And Ron seems to think we need to start training people and acquiring and getting our managers and our public works people before, rather than right at time of commission. Is that correct?
Yeah, assuming during commissioning, what we do is actually transition some of the leaders during the commission phase into the system from the old cylinder, or we people come on time was reactivated and brought under the new system. So at that time, you have to have these set up to receive that, you have to have software, you have to have all their data put into the system. You have to have training people that can manage that. Those users,
Yeah, a little picture 30 on that point. So the project can cover a lot of those, but the driver is right. There are going to be some costs that are not project eligible. Labor rates for staff that's not going to be eligible, but you know, the project will provide the SCADA software, the workstations for operating SCADA, maybe not the software for bill collection, but for operating and linking to the system, that sort of thing. All of the training that employees will need to learn how to operate the system, all of that training will be provided as a project expense. So there's kind of, I think what Chris is saying is there might be a surprising amount of that upfront startup costs that the project can cover, and we're gonna take maximum of any place, anything that project can cover with it cover, but there will be the financial model, the time model is going to have to capture all of it.
well, that's one side, but the building, the other side, we need the building software also, computers and the data entry of all the user base in there before the template.
And you see that as part of the embedded structure.
Yeah, no city has those. We have a billing system, but we have the personnel to do all the extra work, so that's what I'm thinking is right in my mind right now is. We don't have staff, and we couldn't afford it as staff. Sorry.
No, not at this time, I agree. We did it, but that exceeded part of the operation and maintenance cost.
Yeah.
That's where that's all coming down.
And there are additional operating maintenance costs and additional administrative costs, building costs. Built into this is some reason for numbers.
Yeah, I saw them.
So your November report will gotta be a little bit more explicit.
Yeah, I'll try to, make that more explicit and the timing is the big question. And another big question has to be who the entity is. I can explain that, but it's a, you know, I built in a cost for acquiring these. If the city itself is, then, you know, you don't need to buy your own system, you got it. But if the long term is for somebody other than this to own this, then there does need to be, you know, if that entity belongs to this, if you wait, we'll see these drivers. What would be the benefit of somebody else owning it other than those two? Well, that's a question. It's tied into those documents questions. We do know this. What do you do? And when you belong to something other than this, then it's get to them. Some of those costs that might be know would be costs of creating some record system. So I don't have great answers. I'm just starting to think. I don't know the law. I think the understanding what you've read in your city is that the DIO is.
Well, and also, we're talking about their residents, so we're not talking about that. Yeah, it's not gonna be any of our cities, it's not gonna be any money whatsoever, they end up in a lot of costs.
Yeah. And there are times for a typical sewer utility or water utility often has, workers that also do part of the street project. You have economies of scale with your other service areas. And if you are combining a service area, you can have economies of scale with people in sewer projects. So there are, as we think through this stuff, one of the big questions that I'll be kind of think about was who owns it, and if it's independent of the city, then there needs to be a way to.
Chair, just a second.
yes,
We're
go ahead.
going to move back to the laptop, because Tony's having to really work hard to hear that.
I'm so sorry.
Anyway, you gotta go.
I'm so sorry. Thank you.
I would like to say though, that this is something that we've been discussing in our previous meetings, that's whether we want to be an ORS 190 and go as a joint venture, where the communities own part of the system and the sewer authority is more of a rate setting model structure, because joint venture on a 190, the cities can apply for grants and low interest loans and any of that stuff to maintain or build the facilities. Where if we go to the 450s or the 451, then I believe that takes away some of our local control personally. But so those are things that we still have floating around there, and things that we have been mostly as a board already working on. What you folks have heard here as far as the Keller's report and some of Marion County stuff is pretty new to all of us as well. And there's going to be a lot more to come. This is just an update, a little preview to what we're going to hear in these upcoming city council meetings and community meetings. So I just want to let you guys all know that we're not keeping any secrets. We're all trying to figure this out together, and it's quite a tangled web. Brian.
I want to go back and address Ron's question in a little more detail. So right now we do estimate we have a little over $15 million funding gap for initial construction of the lower basin. We are going to be going to the legislature advocating for some reallocated ARPA funds to fill that gap. So that's going to be our main focus funding wise for this upcoming legislative session. And then the following legislative session, we're going to start tackling getting some bridge funding. So basically state general funds, so it's flexible. So that we can hopefully, if we're successful getting some bridge funding, a couple $100,000, that will help set up the personnel administration of the system, that sort of thing. No promises, but we know that is our best funding avenue. So give the NSSA board just a little idea kind of what our strategy is to help bring the resources to the table to make it successful, right?
I would hope that Marion County would also call upon each individual community as well as the NSSA board to support Marion County's efforts in going to the legislature, whether we all write letters, make phone calls, those kind of things. Those can be very important as well.
Absolutely.
So please keep us up to date when that process is happening. Ron,
Just one quick one between, we need a date from the standpoint of NSSA when we have to make a decision to be ready for, make a decision on the authorities. When do we have to do that?
as being a 190 or with a joint venture.
Whatever it is, we need to know when. Short-term or long-term?
No, we've already worked that date into our analysis on governance structure. That date, Brian, for turning over the asset is June of,
June of, let's see, well, we are asking to have, whatever that receiving entity is gonna be, whether it's NSSA, whether it's Mill City, whether it's some other entity, we're asking to have, an agreement in place between Marion County and that entity, June of 2024.
thank you.
Ooh, right,
Coming soon.
coming really fast.
Right, okay? And that's why we will be working.
Yep.
Working with COG closely, yeah.
And one more thing that, a little bit of perspective, having heard, all the information that Gordon just shared. You know, I'll just give a little synopsis of what I heard Gordon saying in a big picture is, okay, he's done just a couple of scenarios to give you initial numbers, right? So now, this board is equipped with some like sideboards. Hey, what are reasonable numbers in terms of target rates? So it's the first level of numbers for this body to start deciding, okay, what kind of options do we want to look for? Because what I heard Gordon say is there's more analysis to come. And he's going to be depending on this board to say, well, here's what we want to explore. We want to look at this versus this. Here's where we think we want to go. What does this look like versus this? So that Gordon can run the scenario. What I'm saying is, you can't walk out of this room, build you financial scenarios. He's got to walk along beside you as you're debating and deciding what options you want to consider. If you're zeroing in on that decision. He's going to be doing the analysis to get you to the next step of understanding, right? We just cannot afford to spend his time looking at everything under the sun, right? So he's going to have to be walking in step with this body, right? So I want to make sure that that's clear. This isn't a one and done, and it's not going to be coming back in 2 months with a full analysis. During the course of that 2 months, he's going to be needing to work with you to hear what it is you want to consider.
I think there's a scenario at all where the existing debt the city has on the road plan could be forgiven by the government as part of this transition.
Well, not under traditional means. We go, does everybody have, I want to go back to those scenarios. Yeah, I think, in those scenarios,
That's one that came out $8 a month.
yes, $82 a month.
$8 reduction from 71.
Which slide is
Yeah.
that, Gordon?
No, I'm thinking, scenario 3. Of the
Gordon, which,
The first scenario.
Which scenario is
the
that?
Scenario that's.
Slide 9.
Are you talking
Scenario
about,
4 at $71 a month. There's a,
you talking about results for phase one?
go back one more slide to the rate reductions.
Go back one more slide. That one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Scott, go ahead and share that window.
okay. I am screen sharing. Can everyone see that?
Yes,
So you'll see scenario 4, what we get all the rest of the funding we need through grants to build the thing. It's your absolute lowest cost. It's $71 a month is the projected minimum rate that each user, each customer would pay. Well, if you take a step over to scenario 3, where it's only about 80% granted, well, that dollar amount, the 80% number, the dollar amount that goes with that 80%, the unfunded amount is right around the range of what Bill City's, outstanding debt is on the existing system. That's one of the reasons why Gordon said scenario 3 is kind of your more reasonable one because there is this existing debt to pay off, right? It very well could be that I can't use project dollars to pay that off. So the rates that the utility charges users may have to account for.
But they have to take some program to the government that will reload.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think the type of loan that the city holds right now is not a forgivable, not a USDA forgivable loan, so I don't know the method.
Question. Okay, that's kind of what I understood as well. Who's got a question?
Tony
has a question.
I had a question. Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you guys. So you mentioned that how imperative it is for NSSA to make some of these future decisions and kind of looking at our different scenarios. And again, when we're talking about Lower Basin Phase 1, Project A, that it's, that's understandably kind of the focus here. But if we're looking at the as a group, we're looking at the bigger picture, we really need to look at, because obviously when I look at the numbers and even some of my friends from people up in Detroit, for Detroit and Idana to not have something that's blended with the rest of the canyon, it just looks like a non-starter unless it's, 150% funded. I'm being a little facetious there, but we need to really wrap our minds around early, Brian, is what you're saying, Phase 1, Phase 2, what these ranges based off of the total EDUs are, or are we just focusing in our discussions on Phase 1 and how does that look? And then what does that do? What does Phase 2 in 5 or 10 years from now do to the lower basin portion of this?
Yeah, I just moved closer to the computer, so that's something easier to hear. Yeah, that's where the board needs to have its discussions. I think Gordon laid out some really compelling reasons to explore what blended rates look like, and he's got the tools to give you what those financial models look like. We just need to know what you want to look at, right? Can't look at every scenario under the sun, but we can definitely look at a range of scenarios. So, yeah, there's a lot more. I see this sort of as a conversation that's going to happen every 2 weeks. This is the heart of the decision-making process, I think, for this board, because it's all tied to financials. Right?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
this is Ken Woodward. Back in the 80s, Bill Clinton passed the Clean Water Act, and the Santiam River is required to be as clean as possible. So the financial burden comes on the upper part of the canyon, Detroit, Idana, Mill City, and Gates. Financially, we can't afford all this, but they want the Santiam River to be as clean as possible in order to flow down to the Willamette, to clean up the Willamette, in order for it to be clean enough to pass the Clean Water Act. So we need to look at that as well and be aware of that. So the financial burden shouldn't be put on these 4 small communities. If there's a downriver, whatever you want to call it, fee for individuals, for us, to support the Upper Canyon on this project, we need it. We really need it. So, there's proof of this, and I just wanted to make everybody aware of that. That's all.
Well, I'm certainly in favor of it. But yeah, and that's like I said earlier too, about the no debt service, because all the benefit goes to our downstreamers, right? So that is very important, and I think we should be, have that well rooted into our mantra whenever we talk to any of our legislators or folks there, so that they know that we need to have this funded without debt service. I agree completely. But also reiterating, we need to really focus in and talk about our type of our entity, our 190 joint venture, what it is we're gonna be, so that we have these things so that we can take advantage of Gordon's modeling expertise too. So,
I'd encourage you to think about that particular question in both short term and long term. Kind of fun.
thank you, appreciate it. Well, we got like 10 more minutes left on our meeting, and we have still our treasurer's report to go and our COG staff report to go. So if we could run through the treasurer's report real quick.
So basically, what the advantage to get the all paid up to date. We all year, so it just went to the survival. Other than that, there's nothing really to do on the third report.
Very nice. Todd, what do we have for our report?
Well, you have a memo from, staff about what we've been up to in August and September. That was part of your packet. One late breaking, update that I received, or Scott and I received this evening, is that, LGLB, the local government law group, has declined representation on the issue of, the operating agreements. So, at your work session, you directed staff to reach out to them about helping you start to put together agreements that would allow you to move forward as a joint venture. They've thought long and hard about that, and just that is not what our firm does well. We would be happy to continue our representation, to represent you in our other expertise. So what that means is that you as the board would need to direct staff to open a procurement process to find a firm that would assist you with that. LGLG is willing to advise you about what your process should be. They suggested in their email to us that you follow the ORS 279 procurement process for intermediate procurement. And then as we mentioned in the staff report, the county has signaled that your legal costs for this purpose, for the purpose of helping you create agreements, could be considered project costs. One of the pieces that we would ask for in the procurement process of this firm is to give us an estimate so that the county can inform your decision about how much they're able to put towards that out of their project. Would you want to comment any more about that? Okay. So,
So are we needing this kind of direction sooner rather than later? Absolutely.
yes.
So if somebody figure out a way to put that into a motion and move forward,
Do we have a scope of work?
let's go for work.
We would direct staff to do that for you.
And I'd probably define the type of contract. So wouldn't that be the first step?
Yeah, let me do two clarifying issues. Number one, I think it would be good for this board to direct that so we can come back with something and get that process moving, because the June 24th date is what is looming. And in legal terms, that's not that long away. That's a minute in this process. Now, the other thing I want to be really clear about, you guys are a 190. The joint entity portion that Laura and I use as a term of art are the agreements that tie and bind the individual members of the 190 to the actions and projects and policies of the board, i.e. through the sewer system, okay? The joint entity part of your 190 is that binding within contract within the four corners section. That requires each individual group to have some say and role in how those things get structured in the end, okay? And why that's important is because that is how you borrow, go for grants, operate the system, set rates, and do the things that you would do as a body right now. Okay? Your other opportunities and options in the end, let's put to the side right now. You know what they are. They may be mid and long-term objectives of this group to do that. But for right now, the county needs a receiving agency. And that operating agreement, we also feel strongly about, and this is a conversation we had with your legal counsel, was that we felt that there needed to be an agreement that included the county as well, so it becomes this road map of how that agreements, those finalization of those agreements really look. So people know when things get turned over, what they do, and who could be assigned responsibility. Remember, let's go back to the beginning. We asked the state pretty simply, can a 190 get a grant for operating funds? No, you can't even get a grant. So we knew very quickly we had to move into some structure that allows you to do that. So the operating agreements are the clarity contractually that you need. If I was going to recommend something to this body, I would say give us the authority to put it together, scout it, and bring it back as a package ASAP to you, so that you do not extend any time. You still have legal counsel in local government law group. You still have that. We would advise you keep that, just like each of you as cities has legal counsel. We would advise you keep that, because in the end, there's going to be an agreement that the attorneys are all going to look at, right? In addition to the body politic, if that makes sense to everybody. So it is a big chunk of what makes you guys work. Now, the financial model that you have now begins to inform it. Last thing I would add to Gordon's aspect is that how you choose that operating agreement, how you choose your planning and governance as you move forward now as a 190 affects your rates, your ability to access and borrow, and your ability to gain grants. So those are very important things, because that is the bridge to your access to those things.
And you're envisioning that document needing to go back to each of our councils to be as a resolution.
In the end,
by each of those councils.
I'm not going to play attorney in that particular role about what that would look like. I can imagine that's what would happen. Right now, you need counsel in order to craft these agreements that makes this thing really work.
I'll make a motion to get the Cub on the road to finding counsel for the joint venture.
Well, for your 190, yeah.
Within our 190 format.
So we have a motion and a second. I think we can just do
Could we work that up to the point of whether it's quote on how much it's gonna cost, but we could approve that part of it?
Yeah, any RFP we put together comes back.
Okay, yeah, yep, okay.
We're not saying, we didn't ask for carte blanche, no.
Okay, so we'll call for the question then. We have a motion and a second.
Discussion.
More discussion, okay?
Well, I'm curious, given the dismal forecast for the upper basin in terms of having a system, particularly in my lifetime, maybe both for North Carolina. Why would we want to be involved in something? Why would we want to bind ourselves as a city to an agreement that might have some liabilities related to cost?
Agreed.
Agreed.
So it'd be a phase one joint venture. I'm sorry? It might just be a phase one joint venture. Well, I just asked a question.
Sure, I think one answer I would give you is, let's do the RFP, let's get somebody in here who could tell you that.
Okay.
Because I think we can surmise, but we can't really guide you. You really need to have somebody that you all have picked, that you can look in the eye that says, give me the answers so that I understand what I'm getting locked into. It could be an agreement that limits you. It could be one that binds you. That's your choices to do. But I think until someone actually crafts that and sits down and talks that structure with you, that I think it's really hard to guess that answer yet. But it's a fair question, and I agree and understand it should be on the table. You have to ask them.
Well, the last thing I want to do as city council is to obligate the city for something we'll never hear through.
That's right. So you need to talk about the pros and cons of that. I agree with that.
And I think that it's an individual conversation at each city council meeting that basically says,
Could put words in there that, anything that you passed would only be binding, getting that fund for the full thing.
Yeah, that'd be part of what they'll bring back.
Yeah.
I don't think that'd be so. Okay, so.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair,
Yes. More
didn't we,
discussion?
didn't we ask COG to contact our attorneys in the work session?
That's what we did, Ken, we did, and so we're reporting out that they do not feel that this is in their wheelhouse. Their recommendation back to us is for you folks to go out and get outside counsel on this.
Okay.
Okay, so all clear what we're looking for here?
Can I follow up on that?
Okay.
Does that preclude them from being an advisor to us,
No,
when the document actually comes back?
no, they're still your legal advisor of record as far that you folks have not broken that arrangement between yourselves and local government, however you call it.
I'm not sure help me walk through if you had another firm that was presenting you with options. You could ask local government law group. I would imagine they would tell you to talk to that group again, because they've declined representation in this area. Does that make sense? So I'm not sure when you said, can we ask, I wasn't sure if you were asking on behalf of Gates or behalf of this body.
No, I think this, in
Okay,
this group asked for clarification.
sure.
That may or may not come to fruition, even though they denied it, they might say, look, we gave you our best advice 3 months ago when we told you this isn't in our wheelhouse. We don't want anything to do with it.
Okay. Okay, so we're gonna move forward and call for the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No opposition, so motion passes. Todd, do we have anything else?
Just a reminder that your next meeting is actually 1 week from today, September 18th at.
The Gates Fire Hall, it's a little cooler.
All right, I'm gonna talk to somebody about that.
Maybe we're gonna have popcorn or something.
I will double check to make sure that.
And I'm just clarifying that we'll double check that we have a hybrid option there. We haven't hosted there before, so we'll clarify ahead of time if it's in person only or if there's a hybrid option.
I am pretty certain there's a hybrid option.
Yeah.
But I will double check.
Okay.
All in favor of going home?
We're gonna go ahead and end tonight's meeting. Thank you, everyone that tuned in. Look forward to seeing you in a week.
No, I got to think, I have a